You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is season 2, episode number 19. We're calling this one Cubs Mid-Spring Training Updates. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W670 on Twitter and Instagram, Fly the W on Facebook, or email us at flythew670@gmail.com. I'm Dustin Rhodes, EP of the Mully and Haw Show on 670 The Score. Of course, your radio home for all things Cubs baseball. And my guy Crawly is here. Crawly, happy Thursday, happy St. Patrick's Day Eve, and happy start of the NCAA tournament. I know you filled out a bracket.
My bracket busted when the Dominican Republic didn't make it through. I had them winning the whole thing.
Wait a minute. Not a World Baseball Classic bracket, Crawly, a college basketball bracket. You didn't fill out a bracket? Are you like the only American that doesn't have a bracket?
I don't have a bracket, man. I don't know anything about those.
You got like a square. You know they do squares for college basketball, like they do Super Bowl squares. So the last score of the game, so like winner 9, loser 6, and so you have action in every single game. It's a pretty cool concept.
No, I'm too busy. There's too much baseball going on. I have no time for other shenanigans here right now.
All right, well, let's talk about our shenanigans then. This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It's segment number 1, and since we were last with the crew, Crawly, the Cubs have played 2 games since our last podcast, and they're playing right now as we're recording this.
Yeah, so we thought we would look back at the 3 big questions going into camp and where they stand right now. When we walked into camp, when the Cubs spring training started, we wanted to know about the 5th starter spot, who was going to win that job. The 3rd base position was something of a question. And then unfortunately, early on in spring training, you wanted to know who was going to have to man right field for the first few months of the season while Seiya Suzuki recovers from an oblique injury. So last night, the Cubs game against the Reds was rained out after 4 innings, so it didn't count. And on Sunday, the Cubs lost against the Brewers 5-3. Offense didn't look too good against them. They had 5 hits against the Brew Crew. They only had 2 extra base hits. Ian Happ had a nice two-run home run. He's having a great spring. And there was also an RBI double by Cole Roederer. The offense didn't do much against the pitcher named Jansen Junk, who pitched well. And I just wanted to say, that is one of the all-time great baseball names there, Jansen Junk.
Jansen Junk, I love it.
So the big story, though, has been Adrian Sampson's tough spring. And this is where we want to look at one of those big stories as we reach the midway point of spring training. Dustin, we're 2 weeks away from opening day. So, it's not the beginning of spring training anymore. We can look at some of these things and start to kind of look into the crystal ball of what David Ross might be thinking as we, we're getting closer and closer to Wrigley Field 120 against Milwaukee,
What, 2 weeks from today, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks from today. So with Sampson, after a strong 2022 season, he made 19 starts. He had a 3.11 ERA across 104 innings. You're going to take that every day. We talked about it before from a 5th starter. We talked about it a lot last season. That's great. He came into camps as probably one of the favorites for the 5th starter spot. Unfortunately, things haven't gone that well for him. Against the Brewers on Sunday, he went 4 innings. He gave up 6 hits, 3 runs, 2 more home runs.
So that's 10, right? That's 10 home runs now?
I think the total now is up to 8. And so he had a rough first outing. And you remember I said, don't worry, it's spring training means nothing, and it doesn't. There's been players that have, played, a lot of games and had good spring trainings and the season went bad and vice versa. But they've played 19 games. They didn't count the game against Canada. And last night was a rain-shortened game and didn't count in the stats out of their 33-game schedule. So now we're starting to take a look at things. And Adrian has pitched in 3 games. He started 2. He pitched. He's thrown 8.1 innings right now, same as pretty much all the other starters at this point. And in those 8.1 innings, he's given up 13 hits, 13 runs, 8 home runs, along with 3 walks and 6 Ks, Dustin.
Right. Well, I mean, the 8 home runs is that's the part that is really hard to get over. Walks and home runs will absolutely kill you. The 3 walks in 8 innings, it's not awful, not ideal, but not awful. It's also quite a bit of hits. I mean, 8 of the 13 hits are home runs, so that's not good. 8 of the 13 runs are part of home runs. We don't know how many guys were on base. I'm sure we could find the stat out, but it's definitely not ideal. The only thing sometimes, Crawly, is that we don't know exactly what these guys are working on, right? They might be working on something. They might be trying to establish a pitch. They might be, hey, why don't you go out and try this out? And they're never going to tell us flat out that, yes, Sampson was working on something here. We asked him to leave it over the plate. We asked him to do this. We asked him to do that. And that is a possibility, right? But if we don't know that, we have to work on the assumption that he's trying to go out there and do the best he can. And right now, that doesn't seem to be good enough for the 5th spot.
Right. And when you talk about guys trying stuff and working on things, usually if you're saying Drew Smiley or Jamison Tyone, those guys, we know who the 4 starters are, right? We know that Marcus Stroman's going to start. We know that Justin Steele's going to start, Tyone and Smiley. We don't, when you're talking about a guy like Adrian Sampson, he's a journeyman. He's been around for a while, so he's not somebody that's just kind of locked into a spot and he can just kind of mess around and work on things.
Are we sure about Smiley? I mean, I know that's what they want to do. Are we sure that Smiley should be a starter, or is it because he's the only lefty they've got?
I think absolutely he's a starter. I think he looked really good today. He left one pitch up, but I'm not worried. Again, see, guys like Drew Smiley, I'm not worried about because I can look at a track history, right?
All right.
And that's where I get worried about Adrian Sampson. If you look at what the issues were over his career, it's always been the fly ball rate, how much that ball's flying in the air. And last year was his best year by far. And so you're worried, was that an anomaly? Was that just kind of he just kind of had a good season and now all of a sudden he's regressing back to his normal form. So when you are competing for a spot, I absolutely think that you want to show that that job is yours. And he, when you take a look at what the Cubs pitching has done, he hasn't done anything to prove that so far.
All right, we'll stick with that.
Megan Montemurro, she quoted David Ross from the Trib. She said, competing for jobs is producing when it matters, and that's the boat that these guys are in. We know where we can pencil in most everything, but the 5th starter spot, no way. And then now when you start to take a look at Sampson's numbers compared to the other guys, that's where you really start to say, okay, can you really get out of camp? Because this team has to get out to a good start. That's just what has to happen. And so you can't sit there and say, okay, we'll wait a month and a half for Sampson to get going. No way you can do that, man. No way.
You don't have that kind of time. No.
And so Hayden Wesniewski, we talked about this on the last show. I was there on Camelback Ranch. I mean, he's 25 years old. He has 3 starts. He's pitched 8.2 innings, so 0.1 inning more than Adrian Sampson. 5 hits, 1 run, 0 of them earned, 0 home runs, 2 walks, and 11 strikeouts. This guy is clearly your front runner for that 5th starter spot based on what we know so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's looked fantastic, but Jed Hoyer was on with Bernstein and Holmes. I believe that was yesterday, and he was not ready to commit to that right now.
You still got, another 8 innings, and not even 8 innings. They're going to go more. They're going to go deeper into games, so you're still going to have to prove it. So you're not going to give it, especially, again, you got other guys that are competing.
And I don't think they need that 5th starter right away either. That's part of this equation too, right?
Right. So you want these guys fighting for this job and seeing who's the best and who's going to be the one that takes it. Now, last night, the game was rained out, but we got to see Caleb Killian. He is the same age as Hayden Wesniewski, 25 years old. He appeared in 3 games. He's had 2 starts, 7 innings pitched. He only gave up 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 home run, 2 walks, both of them last night, and 4 Ks. So Caleb was awesome last night. He had a first inning. He got out of the first inning in 4 pitches, Dustin. And then in the second inning, he made this amazing dive on a catch.
Hopefully people that are listening to this podcast, Crawly, are following you on Twitter because you had an amazing tweet, and that's how I saw that amazing catch.
Yes, and we had that great interview with him while I was in Mesa, so it worked out perfectly. But it was such an athletic play where he just belly flopped and made this. I don't know. I get nervous in spring training. You want everyone to come out hurt, but that was one heck of an athletic play.
One heck of an athletic play, no doubt about that. How about another guy that's looked pretty good, not at Cubs camp, but in the World Baseball Classic? That's Javier Assad.
Yeah, so Assad, Wesniewski, and Killian, they're all 25. He's playing for Team Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. And even when he was with the Cubs in camp, he did really well. And now he's dominating in the WBC. So between spring training and the WBC, he's appeared in 3 games, 2 starts, 7 innings, 1 hit, 0 runs, 0 home runs, 1 walk, and 4 Ks. Now, what people have really noticed is that last year he's sitting about 93, 94 miles an hour with his fastball, right? Occasionally touching 95. This year, he's hitting 96, 97. So his fastball's got about 2 to 3 miles per hour more on it. And the other thing that he struggled with last season was walks. And so far, again, he's only issued 1 walk. So if you're telling me he's got that extra speed on the fastball and he's still able to control things, that's pretty impressive. You know what I mean? It's that's where I kind of look at it and say to myself, this guy's really doing something special.
Yeah, he's looked really good, and what people say about him is that he is kind of he's kind of like the professor, where he's very even keel, like Kyle Hendricks. His heart rate doesn't really move. He's just a real calm, cool, collective individual, and that's the type of guy sometimes that can succeed in that kind of back of the end rotation type of a role.
Now, when I take a look at, though, Adrian Sampson the other day said, quote, "Luckily for me, I can kind of do whatever they ask. I can come out of the bullpen, I can start, I can do whatever they want. As long as we put ourselves in a good chance to win, that's the most important thing." That's the right thing to say. But now you take a look at the depth of the Cubs bullpen. Who would you bump out, to put Adrian Sampson in, who's giving up home runs?
Well, right, yeah. I don't like right now. I think Sampson needs a little extended spring, or needs to go to the minors and needs to work something out. Again, unless they know something, Crawly, that you and I don't. But all you and I can base our opinions on is based on what they do when they're out there throwing the ball against the other team.
Right. And so the second big question mark that we were talking about was who's going to take the third base job, right? We know the middle of the infield solidified with Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner. At first base, you got a platoon of Trey, Mancini, and Eric Hosmer. And then third base was really the only competition in the infield about who was going to get that starter's job. Last year, third baseman Patrick Wisdom had some struggles last season. It was his first full season, so it was the first time he ever walked in and had a job to go in and basically told you're going to play 162 games, right? He slashed 207, 298, 426. He did what he normally does, which is 25 homers and 28 doubles, but he also struck out 183 times compared to 53 walks. So, he missed a couple.
Too many strikeouts. It's way too many strikeouts.
Way too many strikeouts. And so he missed a couple of weeks this spring because of a groin issue, but he's had a solid spring. He's at 313, 421, 500 slugging with 1 home run, 3 walks, and 7 strikeouts and 16 at bats. But, nice to see the average and the on base up a little bit, right? But the other big thing that is noticeable is his defense. And apparently he got called out on his defense.
That's right.
By the coaching staff, by David Ross at the end of the year.
His kind of exit interview, right?
Right. And so Wisdom, he's always been a really good third baseman, but last year he just did not look good. He had a lot of errors, especially early on in the season. And, he attributed that to trying to so hard at the plate that it kind of affected his defense. You know how they say, don't bring it out in the field with you?
Right.
It looked like Patrick did that last year. So hopefully, he can bounce back and have a strong season. Now, another contender that has surprised us this spring, Dustin, is Nick Madrigal. We didn't know what was going to happen with him after Dansby Swanson got signed. And after last year's injury-plagued 2022 season, we were kind of done with him. But he looked decent at third this spring. Obviously he's not a Gold Glove third baseman, but the bat is doing exactly what Chicago fans have come to expect, right? 296, 321, 333, and 27 at bats. So a lot of contacts, few walks, little power. But what do you think, Dustin? You see Nicky 2 strikes break in camp with the team?
I think I do. I think I do, because he's probably doesn't have any options. I don't think you can put him in the minors. I do see that happening because he's versatile enough where he can play 3 of the 4 infield positions. If you needed a pinch hitter, if you needed an emergency DH, he could probably fit the bill. So I think so. Because Christopher Morel has options, right? But I think, the next guy we're going to talk about, Zach McKinstry. Like, okay, you like Zach McKinstry more, or you like Nick Madrigal more? I don't see Nick Madrigal and Zach McKinstry being on the opening day roster. Do you?
Well, I do, and
Okay.
I think that the question is this guy a 4A player or is he a major league player, right? So
I've never heard that before. A
Oh.
4A player.
A 4A player is a guy who can do really well against AAA pitching, but he can't do it in the major leagues.
I've never heard that term before. I've heard of a 5-tool player. I've never heard of a 4A player. All right, see, you're even teaching not only the listeners, you're teaching me.
Right, so he's hit just 208s in parts of 3 big league seasons with the Dodgers. And then after being traded to the Cubs, he hit 206 in 47 games with 4 home runs and 12
And that's
RBIs.
not good. That's not good enough for who he is. I mean,
No. And so, but this is where I'm talking about 4A. He's in AAA. He's a career 323 hitter in 114 games, including a 335 average in 2022. So he can play second or third base. And this is the thing, Dustin. He's a lefty bat.
Lefty bat. There you go.
Yep. And that I think.
Check that box.
He's out of options. So they can't send him to the minors without DFAing him first. And another team's going to take a flyer on him. So I think if McKinstry had options, he'd be starting in the minor leagues. But with that, he has to be with the team, or else another team can pick him up. So that's why I think he's.
All right. So you've got McKinstry and we've got Madrigal on the opening day roster. That means what? You got one more spot left, and we got 2 guys to talk about.
One spot left, and so that's either Edwin Rios or Christopher Morel. The Cubs picked up Rios when the Dodgers non-tendered him. Rios is 28. He's played in each of the last 4 MLB seasons for the Dodgers, but he hasn't gotten more than 32 appearances in any individual season because it's hard to break through LA's starting roster, and he's had some injuries with his hamstring and his shoulder. He's had 20 home runs, 9 doubles, and a triple in just 292 trips to the plate. But we talked about Patrick Wisdom. This guy strikes out 32% of the time. And so his batting average and his on base is really low, 218 and 299. But he has a 492 slugging, and that's against MLB pitching. That's not AAA. So he had 7 home runs in 27 games last season. So once again, Dusty, he's a lefty. And if he could platoon with Wisdom to give the Cubs a viable power threat at third. So Wisdom slugged 533 against left-handed pitching, but against righties, 209, 290, 438. Okay? So that's the thing with Edwin Rios, is that maybe you put Edwin Rios in against the righties, and Wisdom, there's a lot you can there's a lot that you can do, and I think that platooning would probably be the way to go.
All right. I mean, listen, it's okay. Christopher Morel maybe gets more at bats in the minors, can play a position. If Morel was down in the minors, Crawly, where would you like to see him get the most amount of work?
Oh, definitely AAA, and so that's.
But at what? I understand the level, but what position? Like, would you want him at third on a daily basis? Would you want him in center field on a daily basis? Where do you think his long-term, or maybe it's never, but where would you want him to be doing most of his defensive work at AAA?
I think that if it comes down to him breaking into the major leagues, especially with the Cubs, it's going to have to be what he has been, which is that Swiss Army knife position. And so I would like to see him, at second base. He can, definitely some third base, center field. Those would be the 3 spots I'd like to kind of see him. I definitely see him in AAA, but that's the thing, is they were actually it was JD and Coomer on the call today. And I was watching the game, and they were talking about Morel. And you remember, Dustin, he got off to that great start. A lot of times when players break into the major leagues, they go right at him with fastballs. Fastball. Can he hit it, right? And Morel proved he could hit the fastball. But once they started spinning it on him, all sorts of problems. And so this spring, he's slashing 241, 313, 483 with 2 home runs, but 14 strikeouts compared to 3 walks. So, when we talked about McKinstry, when we talked about Rios, part of the problem with those guys is they never got at bats. Okay. And so it really is hard as a young player to sit there and sit 5 days out of the week and go 2 for 3 on that 7th day. That's really hard. If you're telling me Morel, could you see him starting more than twice a week?
No, probably not, unless obviously there was some kind of an injury, right?
Right. So if that's the case, let this guy, especially, he's got to work on identifying breaking pitches. Okay. He has to figure out, you just being able to hit a fastball can cut it in a lot of different, single A, double A, even triple A to a degree, but it's not going to cut it in the majors. Once they know what your weaknesses is, they are going to pound you with it. And yes, you're still going to get some hits. Yes, you're going to get some home runs, but usually those are against guys that can't locate the pitch where they want. You know what I mean?
Yep. Absolutely.
So, I hate to say it because I love Christopher Morel, one of my favorite guys, but I don't think it's happening. And so that takes us into our final question about spring training. Who's going to be the fourth outfielder / right fielder as Seiya Suzuki recovers from the oblique injury? Good news out of camp today is Seiya's resumed light catch and non-contact swings. So he's going to continue with that program through the week. I haven't heard any Seiya news.
It's something, right? It's something.
Something. So we know Ian's playing left. We know Cody Bellinger's playing center. And David Ross has said that Ian's not going to be playing center field if Cody has a day off. So the Cubs need someone who can play all three spots in the outfield. And to me, Dustin, when they saw Mike Tauchman in camp, I just saw he got a lot of starts. They were going to give him a look. The pride of Palatine has done the most with his chance right there. He is slashing 318, 444, 545. He's 32 years old, right? So he was in Korea last year. He had some stops along the way with the Yankees and the Giants. But I think that while Seiya is recovering, chances are the Cubs use some combination of Wisdom, Mancini, and Tauchman in right field. That's what I see happening. And then once Seiya gets back, I think Tauchman is going to definitely be
He'd be your odd man out.
No, I think he's going to be a fourth outfielder.
Okay.
I think they'll worry about what.
And then Mancini won't go into the outfield unless it's an emergency.
Correct. And so a lot of things can happen between now and when Seiya gets there. Injuries can happen. They're not going to have to make any roster decisions for a while. But I think with Tauchman, you have a guy who can play plus defense in all three positions, and that's what they're really going to want more than anything. Nelson Velasquez had 13 at-bats in spring, but he didn't do much. You got to figure he's starting the season in Iowa. That's the other guy that potentially had a chance. But like I said, Tauchman to me is going to be a guy that is going to stay on the roster for a while. And then, again, that combination of Wisdom, Mancini, and Tauchman until Seiya gets back.
You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 19, Cubs Mid-Spring Training Updates. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. In this segment, Crawly interviews Max Thoma and Brendan King, play-by-play announcers for the South Bend Cubs, to talk about the championship ring ceremony held back on Monday over at Sloan Park.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, we have the broadcasters for your 2022 champion South Bend Cubs, Max Thoma and Brendan King. How are you doing, boys?
What's up, Crawly? Thanks for having us, man. Doing great, my man.
I mean, you guys are still in Arizona. I'm wishing I was still in Arizona, but I'm sitting there watching marquee like I usually do last night, and who comes on my TV but the 2022 South Bend Cubs getting their rings. Let's sing them. Put it right in the camera. Let's see that bling a little bit there.
Whoop.
Just for all the listeners out there, we are on YouTube channel now with 670 The Score. So if you want to see these bad boys, they are looking pretty nice. So, you guys got the phone call telling you when to come out and when they were going to do this ceremony. Did you guys have a pre-reunion with any of the players as far as before the ceremony took place?
Let me go first. We rolled in here early this week, and the first day we were there was the day before the ring ceremony a couple days ago, and it was so great to catch up with everybody because usually we only see our roster at any given time, but being out here in Arizona, you get to see all the guys you've had from years past. So many guys come through any particular minor league affiliate in any given year. We had about 70 guys, I think, play with the South Bend Cubs last year, so we got to see all those guys, shoot some content, talk to some guys, interview some folks, talking about that championship run, how excited they were to hang a banner, to get the ring. And people were very excited, and they were obviously even more excited to get on the field at Sloan on a Tuesday night with just an absolutely packed house and a raucous atmosphere. You could barely even see the lawn out there on the berm. There were so many folks out there, but seeing their faces when they get the rings and open that box for the first time and see, all their hard work paid off. They got to celebrate on the field in September, and now getting to see the ring here in the month of March. I think they were pumped.
Yeah, it was cool, especially to the actual ceremony, Crawly, because we were in the Cubs complex auditorium, and, obviously Andrew Berlin, Joe Hart, Nick Brown, Chris Hagstrom are there. We were lucky enough to be there. But, then you see guys like Justin Stone come in and Jared Banner and, the Chicago Cubs front office. And, next thing you know, here's Jed Hoyer walking in, and Jed gives a speech to the guys, and Lance Reimel, our manager, gave a speech to the guys. And honestly, I left feeling ready to run through a brick wall, because after what Jed said and what Lance said, I mean, we want to do it again, obviously. So
there were some great speeches. I think in the team photo when we first got the ring, I think Jed Hoyer might have boxed me out of the picture. So I might be blocked by Jed.
Let's take a look, because our friend Rich Biesterfeld said, "Hey, Crawly, yeah, you're talking with my guys. Bring those pictures up here." Which one? It's this one right here. There you are.
Yep.
There you are. And there's BK checking his text to see if I'm bothering him again. But that is the thing, is that, there's a camaraderie when you win a championship like that. You've seen it with the 2016 Cubs. We've seen the Blackhawks, the Bears. In my lifetime, I've been lucky as a Chicago fan to see pretty much everyone I care win a championship. But that connects you, that bonds you very much together. As far as you're concerned, BK, this is your second time around, 2019. So you're wearing the 2 rings right now. What would be the biggest difference that you would say between the 2022 and the 2019 South Bend teams?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I was telling somebody the other day that the 2019 team, and this is nothing against the 2022 team, and then kind of inverse for what I say about the most recent guys, is the 2019 team just whooped people. There was never a sense of panic or like, hey, let's sit down as a group and we got to talk about this. Nothing like that ever happened, because like on this ring, if you take a peek at it, it has the 7-0 on it. We swept the playoffs. And remember, at that point in the minor league baseball playoffs, that was 3 separate rounds. So you had to win 2 separate 3-game series. We did that against Bowling Green. We did that against Great Lakes. And then the championship best of 5, a sweep of Clinton. And Clinton had a pretty good team that year too. So those guys just went balls to the wall, man. I mean, there was not a sense of worry. It was a young team too. I mean, Cole Roeder was 19. Brennan Davis was 19. So, but that team just kind of played from a wise sense beyond its years. I think a lot of that had to do with our manager, Buddy Bailey. But this 2022 team, and I'm sure Max would agree, they didn't necessarily walk in and just beat the brains out of people, but they never quit. And they had to win 2 decisive game 3s on the road in both series of the playoffs, and kind of the same thing on this ring. There's the logos of the team that we beat: Twins affiliate Cedar Rapids, Guardians affiliate Lake County. But, especially in that championship series, Crawly, it didn't feel good after losing that game 1 at home. I mean, you were there, man. You were there. There was a bit of a sinking feeling in that stadium after we lost. But then, game 2, Michael McAveen gets a massive save. Game 3, 3 massive home runs, Aliendo, Verdugo, and Casey, and the guys just didn't quit. So I think the difference is that 19 just kind of had 22 had a sense for the moment and had the ability to just come back in any setting. And 19, the guys were just playing with so much confidence, they didn't need to worry about that.
And Max, when they talk about that team finding that moment, all the come from behind victories in the 2022 season and your marquee record, I mean, living for the moment. I mean, that had to have been so much fun as an announcer to call all those walk-offs and come from behind victories.
Oh, absolutely. Big time players make big time plays at big time games. And we had a whole lot of big players this year. And, everybody stepped up. We were the first ones always to tell them, hey, we're on marquee on Friday. We're on marquee on Sunday. Make sure the fellas know, because they go out there and they just ball out on Marquee Sports Network. We started 9-0 with 4 or 5 walk-offs. Pablo Aliendo, if every game of the year was on Marquee Sports Network, he might have been Cubs minor league player of the year. He might have hit 330 with 30 bombs. Who knows? But yeah, this team was just such a blast. It was so much fun to come to work every day. And they just grinded. Winning those games on the road at the end, game 1 at home, also kind of felt like Lake County just stole it from us. But, Lake County had promoted some of their best players, and you looked at the roster on both sides and you say, we have a far better team on paper. And then you lose game 1 and, anything can happen in a 3-game series. Anything can happen, in any one day. And we needed, things to go our way for a couple games in a row, and they certainly did. Our starting rotation, we had a great chance to win at any time we took the field. And that batting order, as long as they brought it, anytime they performed well, you knew we were going to smoke somebody because the pitching staff at the end of the year was just lights out.
Now, I got to see you guys talk to T-Mac, Taylor McGregor, who we all love. She's been on the Fly the W podcast. And Brendan, you were talking a little bit about how you only wear the ring out to like weddings and special occasions. You brought it to Club 400, I know, and a nice little wedding trick. Are you going to bring both of them to weddings now in the future, or are you just going to bring one?
That's a great question. Another great question.
You got to go double barrel.
You got to go double barrel. I mean, it's probably one of those things where if you wear one, you got to wear the other. But just as I told Taylor, I was legitimately scared to wear this first one. I didn't know what to do with it because I was so deathly afraid that I would drop it, I would lose it, something would happen. But then I got more comfortable with it. But then I realized when you wear it out, people want to try it on, and then people hopefully don't drop it in maybe a bit of a in a state that where after they're partying and whatnot. But I will say at Club 400, when you tried it on, you took very good care of it. And I appreciated that.
Now I got to ask you, Max, I didn't see like when they gave you the ring, it was in a box and then you opened it up.
Yeah.
Now I know you probably seen BK's ring before, but when you looked at that ring, how special was it for you to see it on your finger, and just how much have you looked at it since you got it?
I mean, it hits different. I've seen BKs many times. I've seen, a lot of South Bend Cubs employees. I've seen a couple 2016 World Series rings in person, but and I've even seen pictures of what ours was going to look like, the mock-up. But until you open that box and, you see your name on the side of it too, I mean, it hits different. And, obviously we're not, on the field. We didn't really do anything to, deserve playing wise to have one of these rings, but just being part of such a special organization, and working there day in and day out. Baseball season's long, I mean, you're there every day working, 60 to 90 hours a week. And Andrew Berlin and these rings are just absolutely incredible. I mean, if these aren't the best rings in minor league baseball, I don't know what is. But yeah, it was just so rewarding. And, the guys roll in, and BK and I have just gotten our rings, and they're like, hey, can we see it? And it's like, dude, you don't want to see it yet. You don't want that surprise room for you. You want to open a box for the first time and see your name on the side. You don't want to see Thoma on there. You want to see Franklin, So yeah, it was a really cool moment. And as BK touched on, just hearing all those guys that came up and spoke to us in that auditorium yesterday. Yeah, I mean, I wish we had a game that day. So, because you wanted to just get out there and go, mash some home runs and play, because they really did light a fire under everybody.
Now, you guys have mentioned Andrew Berlin a couple of times. For people that don't know, he's on the left here in this picture. And, when you talk about owners, he is just, when I think about South Bend, I think from top down, just everybody is just, I do believe everybody deserves a ring because it's like a family almost in South Bend.
It is a family in South Bend. And when you say literally everybody gets a ring, everybody gets a ring. Whether you are the owner, whether you are a broadcaster, whether you are a player, coach, whether you sell popcorn in one of the stands on the first or third base side, groundskeeper, ticket taker, whoever. And I think that speaks to, as Max said, the generosity of Andrew. I've told this story a lot. I've known Andrew my whole life. Because in his private industry, the packaging industry, my dad competed against him for 25 years. And I've known Andrew literally my entire life. But I think the thing that should tell you most about who Andrew is that, my dad and him couldn't have been more like heated in the business industry. But as personal friends and colleagues, I mean, they were great together. And, that should tell you a lot about, somebody that you're competing against, but they have the utmost respect for you. And that's who Andrew Berlin is, no matter if you are a competitor, a friend, whoever. The guy's going to respect you, and the guy's going to take care of you.
Now, you guys have been there for a couple of days. Max, I'll let you answer this first. As you've been there, you guys have complete access to walk around anywhere you wanted. I was kind of on the backfields, and I was looking through the games or something. Max, what did you notice? What really stuck out for you as far as this camp and a couple of the games that you've seen so far?
Well, this is my first time ever at the backfields in general. So, I mean, first off, what I immediately noticed is just the setting is just unlike anything else. When you're growing up and you're going to baseball tournaments as a player, as a kid, and like going to Cooperstown, New York, and you got 4 fields where home plate is all, in one little area, and they're all facing away from each other with like a little place in the middle for people to hang out. It's just like that, except the guys on the field are incredibly talented and incredibly important people. But it's great. It's great to catch up with all the coaches and just see them see the different staffs working around with different affiliates. But I mean, what stood out to me, it was great to watch Pete leading off at home, to watch PCA leading off for AAA, swiping a couple bases. I say a couple because he was called out at third. I'm pretty sure he was safe. But, man, he's just always such a spark, even on the backfields on, March 13th, Monday or Tuesday. Monday it was in Arizona. But the thing I was most excited to see, I didn't know I was going to see, I bumped into my friend Jim Callis, who is from the same hometown as me. His son is my brother's age. So we went to school together. But he was going to talk to Cade Horton and watch Cade Horton throw live. So I got to see that for the first time ever in person. He threw 2 innings, faced a handful of batters. And it's cool to see. It was just silent there. You walked by with me, and it was quiet. Everybody was just locked in, focused, watching Cade throw to, one guy at a time. He faced, Bryce Ball, Cole Roederer, Scott McKeon. I'm not sure if a couple other guys got in there. But just watching him and seeing that arm and that talent, because we've seen a ton of good pitchers, especially last year, and the pitching development in the Cubs farm system right now is just incredible. And then you think about new guys coming in, and Cade obviously highlighting it the most, the first-round pick from last year. But just so much to look forward to.
I got to tell you, Max, I know a lot of people were complaining when that pick was made. I didn't hear him complaining yesterday when those videos of that slider was going on. How about you, BK? What stuck out to you as far as what you got to see over the last couple of days?
Oh, man. So I do want to make a point on Cade Horton, because we were watching his live BP with Riley Martin. Riley was actually about to leave the field, and we asked Riley, first of all, have you met Cade yet? And he said, no, I actually haven't met him. So that should tell you just how new still Cade Horton is to the Cubs complex, that he still hasn't met some guys. So, I mean, I think people need to be reminded that it is going to be his first pro year, and he's still getting acclimated to new teammates after, a long college run. So, sometimes things take time, right? So with that being said, I forgot who was hitting. It might have been Ball. Regardless, Cade Horton threw him a slider, and it like made a wave go back behind the field of oohs and ahs. Like, you see that? Like, it was lethal and just disgusting. So I think Cubs fans should be really excited about Cade Horton. Anything else that stood out? I'm going to mention a name that really does not get as much love as I think it should be. And that's why I mentioned to Taylor McGregor last night about, you look at the Cubs top 30 prospects list and you're going to find 30 amazing ball players, but you can easily come up with 30 more that should have similar hype. And one of those guys is Luis Verdugo. And Doogie is one of our favorites, plays a great third base. And what's scary about him is that, he's still just 21. He's still growing. He's still growing into a body that's probably about 6'2", 200 pounds by now. He's only going to continue to get bigger. He had a mantra last year where he would walk up to us at batting practice. 2 doubles. I got 2 doubles today. Well, we sit down at the AA game where Lance Reimel and Dan Puente are coaching. First thing, he smacks a double into the left center field gap. And, he just has an ability at the plate to barrel a baseball. And I think he's going to be an amazing player.
I would just add, it's also exciting for us to get to see guys that we actually haven't even had yet, because I've never had the opportunity to see guys before they make it to us. And seeing Kevin Alcantara in person and watching him take BP, and he was hitting back-to-back, him and Jordan Wogu. There were some balls flying further than I could really even track them. Wogu cleared the netting beyond the left field wall. But Alcantara, just, imagining what that kid is going to become, especially when he puts some muscle on. I mean, he is a physical freak. He is just a gifted athlete, too. So it's cool to see guys before we actually get them. And obviously, we're hoping and expecting to have Alcantara on opening day, ideally.
Well, guys, I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me tonight. I know that every moment in Arizona is a special moment. So I hope you guys have a good rest of your trip, a safe journey home. And I hope to see you guys in South Bend sooner rather than later.
Crawly, thanks, man. We're looking forward to seeing you in South Bend, too. Banner raising coming up a couple weeks into April. We're excited.
Let's see those rings one more time.
You got it.
Woo!
Let's go.
Go Cubs.
Thanks, Crawly.
Thanks, Crawly.
You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, Cubs mid-spring training updates. Don't forget, listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Crawly, those rings are pretty fancy for a minor league championship, I thought.
There's no owner better than Andrew Berlin as far as minor league baseball is concerned, and he's a class act all the way. And absolutely, I knew that was going to be a beautiful ring.
Those were really nice. All right, World Baseball Classic update, Crawly. The we're getting into the elimination round last night, so that would have been Wednesday night. The USA punched their ticket by taking care of business and winning that ball game.
Yeah, so the World Baseball Classic's been exciting for people that don't watch basketball like me. The Cubs had 16 players participate, 15 because Seiya didn't play, but pool play is now over. And so some Cubs players will be returned to camp while others continue to move on in the tournament. If you look at the pool right now, and I have a couple screenshots right here. If you're looking at it here, you had Pool A. You had Cuba and Italy advancing, and then Netherlands and Chinese Taipei and Panama did not. In Pool B, you had Japan, Australia advancing, Korea, Czech Republic, and China did not. And then Pool C, you had Mexico, the U.S. advancing, Canada, Great Britain, and Colombia do not. And then the big story from last night, Venezuela and Puerto Rico advance. The Dominican, which was a stacked lineup, do not advance. Neither do Israel or Nicaragua.
And, by the way, there was a little bit more to that Dominican loss.
Yeah, I thought about you on that one, Dustin, when I was looking at that. One of the best closers in the game, Mets Edwin Diaz, is out for 8 months on a fluke injury after they clinched it to move on. He ends up, they're all jumping up and down, and all of a sudden something happens to his leg and he's down.
Well, his teammate picks him up and is lifting him up and they're gyrating around. I mean, again, they didn't win the World Baseball Classic yet. They just survived and advanced. You were expected to do that. I don't think that was a great accomplishment per se for that group of baseball players.
Knocking out Puerto Rico and
that's why, I guess. But my
right.
point is that they were expected to be in the elimination round.
It was a tough round, and they have a lot of pride in it. And it was I just tell people it was an absolute fluke injury. Let's just go down the list of fluke Cub injuries in the past. Brandon Morrow got injured putting on his pants. You had Kerry Wood got injured getting out of a hot tub. Sammy Sosa got injured on a sneezing. I mean,
yeah, somebody sneezed. There was somebody, there somebody like a spider, like they got scared of a spider or something?
There's goofy stuff that happens. It can happen. Guys get injured in spring training. It happens, hopefully, there's an emotion. I saw a video before we came on here, and for some of those guys, the World Baseball Classic is as important or more important than the World Series. There's a lot of pride in representing their country. And I think, when you're a guy from the Dominican and you're representing Chicago, the Chicago Cubs, I mean, of course you're representing your team, but to their country, this means a lot to them. And so I wouldn't want to see people overreacting or taking too much out of that. But looking at the Cubs, and one of the Cubs that was on that Puerto Rican team was Marcus Stroman. He made one start for the Puerto Rican team against Nicaragua. He went 4.2 innings, gave up 0 walks, 2 strikeouts. The only run came on the final pitch of the day. It was a home run. But Stroman and Team Puerto Rico will take on Mexico in the quarterfinals. We just found out Stroman will be getting the start in the quarterfinals versus the Dodgers, Julio Urias of Mexico. So that'll be a really good
pretty
matchup.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Something worthwhile tuning into. And now these games are moving from Arizona down to Miami, correct?
Correct. And so
maybe they won't start at 9:00 at night every time the U.S. takes the field?
Yeah,
My goodness.
That's the thing. It all depends on where you are, and they had games in Asia and games in Miami,
and they were catering to the fans. I mean, let's put it. I will give a ton of credit to the baseball fans out in Arizona that went out there, because the park was packed, and the little bits and pieces that I did get to see looked like a great atmosphere out there.
Oh, and I had friends that went to there, and they said it was a blast. So. Another Cub is Nelson Velasquez, played for Puerto Rico. He played in one game and had 3 at-bats. He didn't get a hit, but he did draw a walk. One of the big stories was Owen Casey, outfielder involved in the Yu Darvish trade. He's a really young kid, and he's always been somebody that's played against older guys. And he did that last year in South Bend. He did that again in the World Baseball Classic. He looked solid for Team Canada. He slashed 231, 286, 462. He had a massive home run against Great Britain to center field, 108 mile per hour exit velocity on that sucker. And he had 4 RBIs, but he never seems overwhelmed. One cool note for any Cub fans that were paying attention to the Baseball Classic. you had Pete Crow Armstrong and James Triantos. They went to Phoenix to cheer Owen on, so I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, very cool to support your teammates like that. No doubt about that.
Jared Young is another guy that was in camp for the Cubs. He played on Team Canada. He had a home run, but he scuffled, hitting 143, 333, 357. Team Canada does not make it out of pool play, so those guys are returning to camp. And one guy we talked about earlier, Dustin, right-handed pitcher Javier Assad. He has continued his hot spring from Team Mexico. He played in one game. He pitched 3 innings. He struck out 2. He struck out Pete Alonso twice, and the only hit that he gave up was a single to Mike Trout. If you can just give up a single to Mike Trout, most pitchers will take that. I talked about his fastball just really ticking up. These are the guys that he got out. He got out Trout, or I'm sorry, not Trout. He gave up the single to Trout, got out Mookie Betts, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Tim Anderson. I mean, these weren't like Team Italy. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So, Assad's Team Mexico will take on Stroh's Team Puerto Rico on Friday. So those guys ought to be excited. One guy we do have to kind of talk about is first baseman Matt Mervis. It's been an incredible run for Matt Mervis to start off in high A and make it all the way to AAA and dominate at every single level. To dominated the AFL. There was a lot of questions. Hey, is he going to be able to continue this up in spring training? And he agreed to play for the World Baseball Classic. And it's been a rough spring for Mervis. It was rough in Cubs camp, and it didn't get any easier in the WBC. He went 1 for 13 with 1 single, 1 walk, and 5 Ks as Team Israel was eliminated. During the Captain's League, he was 2 for 17 with a double, 5 walks, and 8 Ks for a slash line of 118, 318, 176. So a little bit of struggle, and that's okay, Dustin. You know what I mean?
Well, it's okay, but it's not okay, right? I mean, he's not going to make the team. He's not coming out of camp. He's going back to the minors. And what I'm worried about, Crawly, is now you taught me something today. So is this a 4A guy?
But that's what we have to find out, right? So I would have rather they did what they did, which is get 2 experienced veterans and not put all your money on a kid that, if you look at it, Dustin, it was one good season in the minor. I don't want to say good. That dismisses it. Amazing season.
One amazing season, right.
One amazing season, but you're not going to hand a kid a starting first base job based off of that. It wasn't like he was a number 1 draft pick or a blue chip prospect or anything. I mean, he would have been drafted.
But at one point, we didn't know that Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer were going to be like boom, boom, right? We didn't know that was coming.
We didn't. And that's why, tip of the cap to Jed. But you knew that you could. We talked about you and I talked about this, earlier when free agency started. You do not want to put all the pressure on that kid, right? You don't know, again, how much all these guys know. Like I said, once MLB finds a weakness on you, once they find a way to get you out, they will pound you until you can prove you can hit that pitch, whatever pitch that may be. So I am absolutely fine with him going back to Iowa, not having the pressure of being on the big league team, not seeing a low batting average, because with all the hype surrounding him, he came in this spring wanting to prove something, and he's had some struggles, and that's okay. A lot of the players are going to have struggles. It's the great ones are the ones that can overcome those struggles and continue to do well. And I think that Matt Mervis is going to be with a good coaching staff in AAA. I think he's going to get every day at bats. I don't think the pressure is going to be on him, and let's see what he does.
Yeah, let's see what he does. Listen, I'm not saying like it's time to shut the door on him and he's going to be a bust or anything like that. He's not. What was that guy's name? Something Scott, the third baseman that was the second coming of Ron Say. What was that guy's name? Remember that guy? I remember
Vance Law. I remember a lot. There's a lot of third basemen that.
Yeah, there was somebody Scott. There was somebody Scott that was supposed to be the second coming of Ron Say, and just was an absolute, just terrible bust.
There's a lot of guys that end up being busts, and the key is, Dustin, don't rely on just one guy. That's why when people say, okay, we got 4 awesome, incredible outfielders, good, because out of those 4, 1, maybe 2 are going to make it in the big leagues. All right. And that's not even saying starting in the big leagues. That's just saying making in the big leagues. So no problem. There's an interesting kid that I'm going to be watching all year, Bryce Ball, acquired from Atlanta in the Jock Peterson trade. He's a guy that I want to watch, but don't just put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to prospects. That is a recipe for disaster. So you know what? Let Matt get it figured out, and it should be fine. But for Cub fans still interested in the World Baseball Classic, we got 2 quarterfinal results are in. Cuba advances to the semifinals, as does Yu Darvish and Team Japan. Cuba will take on the winner of the USA-Venezuela quarterfinal on Saturday. So for
what's your scouting report on that game, Crawly?
These are going to be hard, man. Now you're starting to get into really good players. Venezuela has really, really done well. I would say USA, they lost against Mexico, so I thought that was a good wake-up call. But anything can happen in these type of games, And same thing with Japan taking on the winner of the Puerto Rico Mexican quarterfinal on Friday. That's going to be a great game, and the atmosphere is going to be absolutely electric. And that is one of the things that I hope people do take away out of the World Baseball Classic, because I think the fans are absolutely fantastic. The Latino fans, Asian fans, I mean, even the great British fans, dude, they are just so passionate. I love it. And so, you have Puerto Rico and Mexico. It's going to be 6 p.m. Eastern time in Miami for that quarterfinal game. Again, so Stroman's going to be starting that one. And then on Saturday at 6 p.m. is going to be USA and Venezuela, and that's going to be in Miami as well. So
good. I'll still be awake.
Absolutely. So definitely check it out. It's going to be some fun. Before we tie this one off here, Dustin, I do want to say rest in peace to a Cubs player that I had the privilege of meeting at Club 400, Joe Pepitone. Joe Pepitone came in the early 70s after Ernie Banks had retired. Think about how difficult it is to be the first baseman that has to follow, Mr. Cub.
Yeah.
But Joe Pepitone was a guy who was absolutely one of the funniest guys you ever heard. He had us cracking up in stitches, foul mouth, a crazy guy, just a wild man, even in when I met him in his 70s. And, he was a fun guy. He had the motorcycle, if anyone remembers. Leo DeRocher couldn't stand him because of the motorcycle. He was just like the hippie guy with the big sideburns and just not the Leo DeRocher buzz cut type of guy. You know what I mean? And so rest in peace to a great guy in Joe Pepitone. I enjoyed meeting him and great guy to talk to. And, you always hate when you lose somebody from the organization.
And if I'm right, Crawly, Club 400's got an event coming up. You want to plug that?
Yeah, April 6th, the Baseball is Back party. Good Friday is the next day, so I know I have the day off. A lot of people have the day off, but Justin Steele is going to be coming to Club 400. You get all you can eat, all you can drink, a question and answer session. You get one item autographed, and you get to take a picture, a professional photograph with Justin Steele. So
what about salsa, Crawly? Will the Salsa King be there? Or will the product be there?
The Salsa King will be there. Everybody loves the Salsa King. Actually, we're bringing a bunch of it to Iowa. It's going to be sold at the Iowa Cubs Park. Nice. So it is blowing up. You can find the Salsa King at all the Jewels. So the Club 400 beer is going to be there. It is. If you've never been to a Club 400 event, guys, I sit here and I know I probably blab about it, but I'm trying to tell the listeners, man, I think about all the players that I've not only gotten to meet, but actually become friends with and talk to because of Club 400 events. And if you want something think about it. I think the ticket's like $125. Okay, you go and get an autograph. It'll cost you minimum for any like Joe Schmo, not even a great player, $50 for an autograph. You're getting all you can eat, all you can drink. You get an autograph, you get a picture, you get a Q&A, you get to make a lot of friends.
Get to hang out with Crawly.
Get to hang out with me. Trust me, there are so many people that came out to the Club 400 tent and were like, "You guys are just as fun as I thought you would be." We absolutely. The only requirements is that you're a cool, nice person, you treat people good, and you love the Cubs. If that fits your description, come on out to Club 400. Me, I've been there so often, I don't even care who the player is. I just like to go see my friends.
Absolutely. Well, that's a wrap, Crawly. Season 2, episode 19 is in the books. The Cubs mid-season training updates. Don't forget to listen, download, review, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow us on the socials, Fly the W on Facebook, Fly the W670 on Facebook, Instagram, and you can email us, of course, flythew670@gmail.com. And now you can watch us on YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel.
Absolutely. You can see our pretty faces. You don't have to just hear us anymore. And now you'll realize why we're on podcast and not on TV. So until next time, go Cubs.